All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to yet another 113 release team meeting. I pinged the link to the doc, the meeting minutes in the chat. Please add your names to the list of attendees if you've not done so already. And I've just started recording, and this meeting will show up in the YouTube channel. So please be mindful of what you say, as you always are. Great. I think I at least see one representative from each pillar, so we can get started. Great. In terms of announcements, pretty much the same that you guys have heard over the last week. We have a beta cut tomorrow, which will be dependent on our discussions today and how we see the issues trending. But that's on the calendar for tomorrow. And Code Slush is this Friday. That means we have our merge blocking tied queries will be in place, especially looking for priority and sig and kind before letting PRs merge into master. That's this Friday, which means starting next week, we have our burn downs. So we'll have our meetings every other day, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, starting at 10 a.m. And our template, I'll be populating a burn down template, which basically is very similar to what we've been following for this release since beginning. Each section, we'd have updates. In addition to what we've been doing, we also would start giving a status for each section around like red, yellow, or green, depending on how issues are trending for that week. So I'll populate the burn down ahead of time and ping the appropriate leads to get the content in before the meeting. So that's pretty much the main announcements from my end. If Kendrick is around, I believe he is off Monday and through Wednesday this week. So if any of the feature shadows are around, do you want to give a quick update from your end? I see Claire. Any updates?
Sorry. Hi. Sure. So yeah, as mentioned, Kendrick is out the first half of this week. So the shadows were taking about 5 to 6 issues from the list and sort of looking at them just to check in on how they're progressing. And then as we learn more, we'll probably each be updating the issues doc with what we hear back from the different issues.
Cool. Yeah, I see that a couple of issues got kicked out last week from 113. And we also had email go out from SAD saying CSI might be at risk as well. So I'm going to give them again time till slush, and we still have at least 2 weeks for them to get everything in. But I think that something that we should follow up closely. And if CSI falls off, I think it brings down a lot of our bug issues that we are tracking as well, because there are quite a few in that area. And there was the cross resource group that Kendrick listed in the issues there. I have left a ping offline to the owner just to make sure if it's still on track or not. From GitHub, I do see he says that all the related PRs are in, but that was the update about a couple of weeks ago, and I would like to know if there's anything there, especially around docs that we need to be tracking. The last item was something that I added. It's more of an FYI. So this scheduler priority, especially this came into the radar of CI Signal the last few weeks, because that was the feature that they enabled in scheduler, which started failing the end-to-end tests. Since then, the test has been removed, saying that this particular feature is not feasible to be tested in an end-to-end fashion. I did some digging of this over the weekend, and what kind of concerned me a little bit was there was no backing issue or cap or any graduation stage that I saw for this particular change that went in. So I was a little bit concerned around if it is the right time for this to be enabled, more widely, especially if we are relying only on unit and integration tests for this. So I've reached out to the SIG scheduling to get a little bit more insight into what's going on and what is their rationale or justification for having this feature go out, especially if we are masking any unknown issues there due to lack of test coverage. So that's just an FYI. This is something that I will follow up this week, and if need be, depending on what the SIG says, we might have to remove it from, it's currently in the master, the feature is in the master branch, and will go into beta if we cut it, but I will follow up and see if it needs to be backed out. Any questions or any other additions there? Cool. Next up was test infra. Cole, do you have any updates before we go on to the Go version stuff?
Sorry, I had a second. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're mainly just waiting for the branch to become enabled so that we can actually merge all of the job config changes that we have and test them. But we're on track for that. I'm going to spend a lot more time like actually getting those PRs ready today. As far as the merge automation stuff is going, there should just be one more PR to enable that, and that should be a really small PR as well.
Cool. So the only other thing was, of course, Jeff last week, he brought up that Go 1.11.2 is out, and Christoph is working on a separate branch to test out the changes. So ideally, the question was, when do we take this in 1.13? Do we want to take it in the cycle? So I had a couple of discussions with Christoph in that issue that's listed there. So they're still waiting for the rules go support to come in and then build and test the images before we can actually merge the change. And he claimed, according to him, there's no pressing change that needs to go in, but there are a couple of compiler fixes that we generally take when they're available. And given that we are already in 11.1, just going to another point upgrade shouldn't be too risky. So as from the release side, I am tending to take this, leaning towards taking it, depending on when the change is actually available. My sense is I'm not going to be holding beta for this, considering we are still waiting on few changes to land, but ideally would like to take it in before code slush if possible. So sometime maybe later this week. That way we can wet the changes in master before we fast forward into the beta branch anyways. So I will be following up on that issue. If worst case this happens to land after code freeze, I think I will rely on the CI signal. Josh and folks to discuss this before we want to take it in the code freeze timeframe. Because we want to monitor the test results, especially scalability and stuff, those results there with the new changes before we take it in. Any suggestions or feedback on this?
That sounds fine from our end. We'll just cut new images if the Go version changes.
Cool. I kind of looked into the last release. We took it way late, just about 10 days before the release, and things were stable, and that was like a bigger upgrade, not even a point release. So that's my rationale behind leaning towards taking it. But I'll work with you guys offline when it's ready, and we'll make a call.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be okay with a point update anytime except for the last 4 days of code freeze. So I'm not really expecting it to break anything, but we do need to have clean signal in those last 4 days. So
yeah, looks like it might land late this week or early next week, but yeah, never know. Cool. That brings us to CI signal. Josh.
So there's good and there's bad. The good is that all of the tests that we expect to all of the test jobs that we expect to actually pass are passing currently. So I actually feel pretty good about going into beta.
Mm-hmm.
The caveat to that is we have some chronically flaky upgrade tests that are being chronically flaky. They have some failures that may or may not mean anything. Because these are upgrade tests that fail an average of 80% of the time, I believe. Maybe 90% in some cases.
Yeah.
I have an issue open to discuss. Let me actually link that issue now. To discuss actually removing those tests from master upgrade and putting them in like master all. So I will link that in. But here's where the caveat of that is. We've already moved all the GKE upgrade tests out because, you know, they are just completely opaque to us and flaky. If we move these 3 GCE upgrade tests out, we are down to 4 different upgrade tests, and I don't have any confidence on what our level of coverage is at that
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, that is there upgrade functionality that we are just simply not testing at all now?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been talking to Cluster Lifecycle about it, about some of the Kubernetes upgrade tests that they have that are not currently part of the release board, but they say none of those are ready to be blocking tests. They have test infra issues that cause them to be unnecessarily flaky, for example. So put your opinion on that issue. So basically, we don't have anything that we know is failing that we don't expect to fail. But we don't know that we don't have things that we are not testing.
Yes.
So I would say we should go ahead with beta, but we're not done looking at this for this release cycle.
Yeah. I saw your issue on that, Josh. I was just trying to collect my thoughts in the right way before I kind of can update the issue. But yeah, my only fear is these are the only ones that we based all our releases with. And for whatever's worth, that's given us some signal quality, especially when it breaks completely, then we at least know there's like a widespread issue that's causing these things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the material problem with not removing these is nobody wants to own deflaking them.
Yep.
And, you know, and if they're failing 7 out of 8 times for random reasons, the failures mean nothing.
Yeah, but the only, like for today example, if you look at the GCE new master upgrade master dashboard, it's always flaked, but the last 2 runs, it's failing in a consistent way. These are the signals that kind of sometimes scare me from moving it off, because this could,
that would be reason to move it into all or eventually informing when we have an informing board, because we're going to have a lot of tests there that are flaky but sometimes tell us useful things.
So this is why I didn't bother removing anything. Sorry, let me back up. This is why I didn't just say, let's have a blocking informing all and nothing else. This is why I feel like upgrade tests deserve their own dashboard for the currently in development release.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you as a human are recognizing that there's some signal there that's useful to you as a human, and I feel like it's useful to shard out upgrade stuff specifically separate and apart from other tests that might be misbehaving and maybe provide less reliable signal but broader coverage, like the serial tests, right, or the scalability tests. So I think like the desired end state would be to only have a SIG release blocking dashboard that also contained upgrade tests that were sufficiently well maintained that they stayed as green as everything else. But that's not the state of reality today. So even though the tests aren't super ideal, I feel like having them in their own dashboard is useful. And having them be separate and apart from other tests that are flaky or slow is useful. Well, that's just my opinion. I defer to the release lead, and Josh, I know like you are the person who's ultimately looking at these the most. So it's kind of like what gives you, human vibes, human signal, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I would really like to separate out known flaky tests versus the ones that I want to pass even for upgrades. And whether that means, having them be part of a SIG release all, or whether we're going to have a SIG release master upgrade and a SIG release master upgrade all. Or upgrade. Don't we have upgrade optional? We already have upgrade optional.
Yeah.
So we do have upgrade optional.
So it would be a matter of just moving some additional tests to upgrade optional.
Yeah.
I feel like we don't want to move those.
Yeah, especially. Yeah, we can also dig through this. We can wait to see what the cluster lifecycle folks are saying. But I just feel that those upgrade tests, we've always, to some extent, got some signal out of them, especially when they're failing across the board.
Just trying to parse through the test names to see what you're proposing we keep and what you're proposing we don't.
Right now, I'm just asking questions.
Sure. So we've broken up the cluster upgrade tests into parallel and non-parallel versions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so you're saying the parallel things seem to be reliably passing for you, and
and when they do fail, they seem to fail for like reasons.
Okay, and the non-parallel ones tend to flake a lot.
Mm-hmm.
All right, just talking through this out loud. The non-parallel ones, it turns out this parallel non-parallel is the same difference between GCE master and GCE master serial, or GCE master slow. The non-parallel just runs all the tests that are tagged as serial and slow. At least that's what it looks like based on the test list here.
That's what I feel like as well, yeah.
So maybe it is worth punting these over to optional. Okay, I will consider this and comment in the issue appropriately.
So is one of the issues here that in the face of the flakes and those two pairs that are that we think are basically covering the same thing, if it gives us a sign of flake if one passes and one fails, and it's more confidence in failure when both are red, and more confidence in success when both are green?
Both. I mean, I don't think they ever go green, but then more confidence in failure when they all turn red. At least that's the signal that I've been getting from those.
For the non-parallel ones, I don't think, given that they are like literally flaking 7 out of 8 times, even having them all turn red has no significance. The only thing I get out of them is I check them periodically and I actually look at why they failed. And if I see something new in why they failed, then that might be useful.
Okay, here I guess is what I would maybe propose. It doesn't look like all of the jobs have been broken up into parallel and non-parallel variants. So until you there's a new master upgrade cluster parallel. So if I parse out the verbs there, that means I'm creating a new cluster, and then I think I'm upgrading the nodes, but not the master. Does that sound right to you? There's some naming logic to those tests. It would be great if we could actually parse that into the description. So there's new master upgrade cluster dash parallel, and then there's new master upgrade master, right? So I think that takes an existing cluster and then upgrades the master only. It doesn't actually upgrade the nodes. That's a meaningful thing for users because we guarantee that nodes should be able to talk to a newer master and behave the same way. So if that's failing, that's a little scary. But if it's failing only on slow and serial test cases that are super flaky, then maybe that's less meaningful. So in the same way that cluster has been broken up into a parallel and non-parallel variant, we do the same thing for master. Then maybe we can talk about keeping the parallel and shuffling the non-parallel into upgrade optional.
Yeah. So that's the GCE new master upgrade master is the one that was concerning because it was failing on the upgrade itself and not on one-off flakes.
Mm-hmm.
So
and it's something that one is something that we've seen before and been waiting to have recur. because somebody was already on that.
So Josh, I think you've followed Justin's progress in breaking up some of the jobs into parallel.
Yeah.
Do you want to own chasing him down to see if we can break up more of these jobs into parallel?
Sure.
Okay. Because it sounds like that might provide you the signal you want, because you'd see the upgrade test in there, I think.
Yeah, and Josh, I see, if I look into the history, I do see your point of the upgrade test failing for the same reason last week. And then they all went back.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that means, yeah, as you said, it's not beta blocking at least.
Yeah.
Okay. There were a couple of other, are we okay moving on to the other failures while we deal with this offline?
The other failures are all on upgrade tests.
The taint one, that's the one that I was, so that's
Yeah,
also,
and,
we are attributing that to.
The author of the PR looked into it. He said the exact same test is passing on their boards.
Yeah.
They don't know, he doesn't know why it's passing in the upgrade test, and it comes down to he can't figure out how the upgrade test is set up.
Yeah, I CC'd again Justin and Robert Bailey on that just to see if they can help answer his questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did see that the 6 scheduling dashboard is green.
So.
Okay. And the GK upgrade, which are all now in optional, I pinked the on-call, but yeah, we are not treating them as blockers at this point, mainly because the GC counterparts are all clean. Yeah, and they all seem to fail on an ingress issue, which they are tracking currently. Cool. So we are not blocking beta on anything.
No.
So just so I can say this out loud, we have some tests that are red, and we're going to cut a build anyway.
Yes.
Okay. Josh is muted, but I'm assuming he's saying yes.
Yes.
Master blocking was super green this morning. It looks like it's, yeah, I do see some reds here and there now.
Oh, oops. Yeah, those have been like in the last hours.
Yeah. But anyway, we'll follow offline. There's still at least a day before beta, so I can follow up offline with you, Josh.
I had one other slightly CI signal related question. I apologize if y'all have covered it already. Core DNS was something we were concerned about going into default because of performance related reasons. So as a result, I think we wanted to push it in earlier this release cycle. I think we did that. Are we feeling like performance is looking good?
There was no noticeable effect on the scalability tests.
Okay, so do we feel like that is a go, or are we still waiting?
That is a go.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
It's been at least a couple of weeks, I think, and yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. All right, we'll follow up on the new failures offline just to see if they're real issues. But next up is bug triage. Nico?
Hello.
Hello.
I went through a tour of all the bugs, and thanks Aish and the Shadows for being proactive and helping on that. The majority of open bugs are with CSI storage, which might not make it to 1.14, but yeah, there's still some time for that. And the rest are API CRD features and various Windows PRs and issues. I pinged the leads, the issues are updated. CRD hasn't responded yet, but I'll wait for that, or I'll ping again. There's one issue removed, not so important, removing deprecated kubelet security controls. I pushed that to 1.14. There's one urgent storage issue. which needs an owner.
Yeah, I pinged the issue this morning.
Hmm.
There's an associated PR, so I'm assuming just the issue is not populated with the owner.
MSAO specifically told me that it doesn't have an owner, but
Okay.
so I'm not sure if it's the same one. They have various issues scattered around, not necessarily linked with the PRs. Some comments were updated yesterday. But it should be fine for now, whether it goes to the release or not. And that's all pretty much.
Yeah. So I mean, how is your sense of if the issues, especially the ones that is getting opened against 113, do you kind of see the trend going down, or is it still too early?
There is still some time, and it's mainly CSI that's the most issues, and that is a known thing. I think Windows is on track, and the CRTs just 2-3 issues, which I think that they should be okay as well.
Cool. And I know we don't actively track PRs this early, but I just added a link there to the pending PRs in 113, mainly because it's the first time we'll be enabling the merge bot during /. So just in case folks, in case owners are wondering why their PRs are blocked on merge, that's something that we need to follow up on.
Yeah, I'll have my mind on that. And I guess the bot will signal with a message on the required labels, but still I'll be there to put them and so on.
Cool. Awesome. I think from next week, once we use the burn down template, it'll be much easier for us to track a little bit.
Yeah, it will be more frequent.
Cool. Thanks, Nico.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions for Nico, anybody, before we move on? Cool. Tim, next up for docs.
Hey, yeah. So we have a lot of new open docs PRs since last week. So they've been coming in at a decent rate. We're at about 60% open or complete docs PRs currently. So if we keep up at this rate, then I think we should be good for the placeholder docs deadline on November 8th.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw a lot of GitHub activity over the weekend for all the docs. So that's promising. Awesome. Yeah, let us know if you need any help pinging any specific issue or the SIG. More than happy to help.
Sure thing. Yeah.
Cool. And then next up, release notes. Mike.
Hey y'all, how's it going? So over the last week, I've been working on increasing the number of inputs to the release note generation process. And talking to Steven, he sent me the Google spreadsheet, but also, which is, not super easily parsable, but I did find the milestones. Milestones awesome. So it has kind of a pretty parsable release note that I can pull out of there. So I'm going to work on doing that, populating the new features section with that, since there are no release notes from commits yet, which is not unusual given the length of time of the release so far, but is unusual given that slush is about to start. But because, actual development is so short, there's the kind of juxtaposition of these two facts. So in order to make sure that we have some sort of nice document, I'm going to parse that and take like the 27 issues, turn them into a little section of the document. Now, one thing that I have to do is kind of, that's interesting that I wonder if anyone has opinions on, is I have to go through these and see. So a lot of them have tracked yes labels and stuff, and it is unclear to me how far along different issues are that are in the milestone in Kubernetes enhancements. So I'm not sure how, what's the word? I'm not sure how accurate or how truthful of a representation of the features that are in the release this milestone is, but perhaps, we will continue to curate the membership of this milestone.
So
go ahead, Josh.
I got a couple things on that. Number one is there are a lot of PRs that are effectively in 1.13 that were not given a 113 milestone. Because they went in,
Yeah.
2-3 weeks, etc. I would say the majority of them, in fact. The second thing is, are you saying that there aren't release notes messages in the PRs?
Yeah.
I think there's a problem with the tool then, because I do LWKD every week, and one of the ways I do that is pulling the release notes for things that went in the last week, and I have a lot of them.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we can sync up offline or something. I checked last week and I wasn't able to find any commits that went into master that had the tags, and I've been running the tool on previous releases and stuff to make sure that that's not the case. But let's totally sync up offline if that's the case.
Okay. Yeah. And Josh, following up on your question, do we generally, how early in the release do you start tagging every PR to a milestone? Especially when there's no gate.
Right. When I've been in charge of PRs and past release teams, I didn't do it comprehensively until the day before Code Slush.
But and theoretically, all the PRs in all time should have a milestone going in, except for perhaps the most trivial document, like spelling fix PR.
Okay.
But there's no PR that should hit any repository that has no milestone. That's a failure of us to enforce some kind of sane process.
Right. That's not our process today. Like, it's not documented as a hard requirement. Automation doesn't enforce it. Automation doesn't make it easier. It's something release leads have talked about, and I can dig up the issue where we talked about hopes and dreams around this, but today nobody really has to explicitly add a milestone, and I don't often see people do that prior to Code Slush. They start noticing during Code Slush.
Yeah, because it's only required by the automation tools at that time. It's an easy enough change to make that we could just require it at all times. And so if you want your pull request to merge, you must have a milestone.
Right, and then you bottleneck on SIG leads at all times.
Yeah, which I think everyone should be fine with that at this point.
I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole.
I kind of believe bringing this up earlier in the release, but then this again, there are like hundreds of PRs that go in, so we didn't know how to is it a good idea to enforce that and then expect some milestone maintainer to slap the milestone there for every single PR? But yeah, more open question for the retrospective maybe this time. But yeah, Code Slush this time. Code Slush is enforcing. We'll start enforcing the milestone anyway in 4 days. Okay. So Mike, there was also a feature sync that we had with Catherine sometime last week, where she had a draft of a feature she was going to talk in her blog post. I forget if you were part of the meeting. If not, I can forward that talk to you so that you can cross check and pull some details from there if you need.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be great. I don't think I was in that meeting.
Okay. And so the release draft that you plan to send out, do you also plan to have release theme section in there so that SIG leads can start chiming in there?
For sure. Yeah, I could do that if we want to start distributing the stock to SIG leads at slush time. Generally, the way that this has worked in the past is that the document that we generated had the SIG sections for all of the notes provided by their SIG. So either the tooling is faulty or there are no notes undetermined at this point. But since there are no SIG sections yet, it's interesting as to which ones we should ask to contribute notes or to contribute major, or we could just generate all of them.
I would at least start with the ones that we know with enhancements and all the changes that's going in for 113. Sure. Start from there, and then let's take a look at the tool first, and hopefully we'll have more data out of there. But at least we should start with the known changes, the big changes that are going in for 113.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think this whole, the next 2 weeks are going to be super compressed into just a couple of weeks. And then we should probably get hold of folks before they leave for Shanghai as well. which is the week after next. I am not too sure.
A week from today.
Okay.
1 week away. It's next week.
Okay. Awesome. That's pretty much all I had on the agenda, unless anybody wants to talk about anything else that's burning that needs to be discussed. Cool. I think I'm going to start tracking these things a little bit closer now that we are in the slush week almost. And I'll ping you guys offline if I have more questions. Awesome. That's cool. That brings us to the end. Have a happy Monday, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.